November 28, 1942. South of Tobruk, Libya, the North African sun scorches the sand, reflecting off the steel hulls of a German reconnaissance column. Oberstleutnant Hans Weber sits rigidly in the command seat of his SD. KFC 251 half-track, eyes scanning the undulating desert horizon. Dust swirls in thin, ghostly clouds as the engines of his convoy groan over rocky dunes. The smell of hot metal, oil, and the faint tang of spent gunpowder fills the vehicle interior. Ahead, a glimmer catches his eye. At first, Weber thinks it is a mirage, a trick of the searing heat. Barrels of oil and crates of supplies, perfectly aligned, almost ceremonial in their arrangement. He signals the convoy to halt. The radio crackles faintly, voices reporting the same sight. Something is here that doesn't belong, something out of scale. Weber dismounts, boots sinking into the gritty sand, dust clinging to his uniform. He approaches the supply dump cautiously, sidearm drawn, scanning for traps or concealed anti-tank mines. What he sees makes him stop in place, hand hovering over his forehead to shield his eyes from the glaring sun. Hundreds of fuel drums stretch into the distance, rows of crates stamped with Allied markings. Ammunition, rations, and spare parts stacked neatly, almost absurdly organized. The corporal beside him shakes his head. "Sir, they have enough fuel to drive across the desert twice over." Weber kneels beside a crate, opening it carefully. Shells, hundreds of rounds, neatly packed, polished, ready for distribution. The thought strikes him. Each of these rounds is a gun the Allies can keep firing while German forces scavenge or ration theirs. He stands, surveying the scene again. The scale is dizzying, almost surreal. This is madness, he mutters. We will never match this. A Sherman passes over a distant rise, bright sun glinting off its glassy, and Weber realizes the truth. For every Panzer or Panzerjäger destroyed, the Allies could replace 2 more with no hesitation. And here, in the desert, the fuel and ammunition to feed that relentless engine of war lay in neat rows, waiting to be unleashed. The men move carefully through the dump, noting the makeshift guard positions abandoned in haste. It is as if the enemy had been retreating, leaving behind the very lifeblood of their advance. Weber's staff officers begin estimating quantities: fuel, food, artillery shells, small arms. Each figure grows larger, more impossible, and Weber's mind races with the implications by the time the sun begins its descent behind the distant escarpments. Weber sits alone atop his half-track, looking back at the sprawling supply lines. The desert wind whips sand into his eyes, blurring the horizon, but he sees clearly. The balance of power is not in tanks, not in tactics, not even in courage alone. It is in the staggering arithmetic of fuel drums, crates, and endless ammunition. This is not victory. It is revelation. And Weber knows that this glimpse into the enemy's logistical heart is both intoxicating and terrifying. The desert has offered him a gift, but also a warning. The Allies will keep moving, will keep fighting, and their machine is fueled far beyond what German units can hope to match. That he rises, dusting his uniform, signaling the convoy to continue. The supply dump will be taken back to base, but the impression it leaves on him is permanent. A quiet, burning knowledge that the war is being waged on a scale Germany cannot hope to sustain. Weber's convoy winds its way back across the desert, engines groaning, the sun now low, casting long shadows over the sand dunes. December 2nd, 1942. Near El Agheila, Libya, Oberstleutnant Hans Weber sits in the shade of a rocky outcrop, maps spread across his knee, binoculars resting at his side. His staff officers shuffle papers and tally figures with hurried fingers, each calculation growing more staggering than the last. Crates of 75mm artillery shells, pallets of 50 caliber ammunition, thousands of gallons of diesel and gasoline. They form mountains in his mind, mountains the German army could never hope to replicate. "Sir," the adjutant says quietly, "if we take these supplies, the Allies could keep 3 divisions moving for weeks without resupply. Weber leans back, eyes narrowing at the horizon. Dust clouds rise from distant tracks, Allied motorized columns already moving as if nothing has changed. He knows they will distribute what he has seen to armored units, infantry, artillery batteries, feeding a relentless, organized advance. Every fuel drum is a lifeline. Every crate of ammunition is a sword striking beyond his reach. He recalls the conversation with his sergeant earlier that day. "The desert is ours, sir, but the sand can't stop them." The sand isn't the enemy. They are. Weber nods now, understanding the depth of that statement. As the German reconnaissance unit inspects another section of the captured supply dump, Weber notes the American ingenuity in organization. Pallets are labeled, sorted by priority, fuel segregated by type, ammunition by caliber. It is almost clinical, efficient beyond any German logistical dream. Even under the pressure of an ongoing campaign, the Allies have ensured that their fighting units can march, fire, and fight continuously, unimpeded by scarcity. Weber walks along a row of fuel drums, tapping each lightly with his hand. The sound resonates hollowly, almost musical, yet haunting. He calculates mentally, 10 drums per vehicle per day, hundreds of vehicles, days of reserves untouched, just here. Germany would have to ration fiercely to match the same pace. Even if every panzer and truck in his division were spared, they could not hope to consume this supply fast enough to make a dent. By dusk, Weber gathers his officers. They sit in the fading light, shadows stretched long across the sand, each silently digesting the same inescapable truth. The captured supply isn't merely useful. It is a mirror reflecting Germany's insufficiency. For every German advance, every tactical maneuver, there exists a margin the Allies can always absorb. They can lose, replace, and continue. Germany cannot. The desert wind picks up, carrying fine grit that coats faces and uniforms. Weber watches it swirl across the dunes, feeling the weight of inevitability pressing upon him. He thinks of the men back in Germany, the factories struggling, the rail lines clogged, the scarcity of fuel. This contrast gnaws at him. The numerical reality is undeniable. The front is already skewed, and every drum and crate in Allied hands confirms it. That night, around a small, flickering fire, Weber writes notes for his superiors, careful to document quantities, potential usage, and the scale of logistical superiority he has just witnessed. The words feel heavy on the page, almost prophetic. Outside, the desert is silent, yet he senses the distant rumble of engines, the invisible flow of men and machines, and he knows. This is not a temporary advantage. This is the backbone of the Allied war machine, relentless and overwhelming. Weber leans back, staring into the darkening sky, and for the first time allows himself a stark thought. Capturing the supplies has revealed not opportunity, but the reality of defeat by arithmetic, by numbers far beyond what Germany can marshal. Weber's notes are packed away, the desert wind dying down, leaving an uneasy calm over the dunes. October 14, 1944. Near Aachen, Germany, the ruined streets of a small German town smell of smoke, mud, and something acrid, the remnants of retreat and artillery fire. Oberstleutnant Hans Weber, now reassigned to a reconnaissance role on the Western Front, moves cautiously along a rubble-strewn road. Tanks, half-tracks, and trucks crawl behind him, kicking up dust and debris. The echoes of battle still linger, a dull roar in the distance as artillery pounds positions beyond the horizon. Weber's unit receives a report. Allied supply convoys have been abandoned after rapid redeployment, leaving behind depots full of fuel, ammunition, and rations. The Germans have orders to secure and assess them, but the task is overwhelming. He rounds a corner and freezes. Before him stretches a courtyard transformed into a storage yard. Jeeps lined in perfect rows, crates stacked like miniature buildings, barrels of gasoline and diesel gleaming under the pale autumn sun. Allied markings are unmistakable, the organized chaos of retreat leaving the skeleton of supply fully intact. Even from a distance, Weber can gauge the magnitude. Hundreds of trucks, thousands of rounds, and fuel enough to power an army for weeks. Corporal Schmidt beside him shakes his head. It's as if the entire front has been abandoned in a hurry, sir. Weber doesn't answer immediately. He approaches a crate marked for 105mm artillery rounds, prying it open to confirm. Neatly packed, untouched, ready for distribution. Around him, soldiers begin to count, catalog, and mark, but the numbers seem infinite. Even a full division could not hope to consume it all quickly. He looks up and sees American Sherman tanks rumbling past on the far street, dust curling in their wake, engines low and steady. Infantry follows, distributing supplies and moving into newly captured positions. The supply dumps he had seen in the desert now find their counterpart here, a European reflection of the logistical mastery he had observed months before. Scale and efficiency, fuel, food, ammunition, all perfectly aligned to keep the front moving. Weber feels the weight of the moment. In North Africa, it had been revelatory. Here, in the heart of Germany, it is undeniable. The war is no longer just about skill, bravery, or tactical genius. It is about who can feed, move, and resupply faster. And here, the Allies have already demonstrated supremacy. Germany can fight, but for every tank, truck, or soldier destroyed, the Allies have reserves ready to replace them. To continue, to overwhelm that he gathers his officers to discuss the implications, but the discussion is almost symbolic. The numbers speak louder than any tactical plan. Each fuel drum, each crate of shells, each rationed loaf of bread screams the same truth. The front is already skewed against them. Capturing the supply dumps does not offer a chance to seize initiative. It merely confirms that the war's momentum lies elsewhere. That evening, Weber watches from a rooftop as American convoys continue to move smoothly through broken streets, engines purring, men and vehicles in disciplined motion. The scale is intoxicating, terrifying, and unavoidable. He returns to his temporary headquarters, pen in hand, recording the quantities, the locations, and the stark reality. Germany cannot match this flow, and every lost depot, every abandoned crate, every captured supply point only confirms what he feared. The outcome is already being written in fuel drums, ammunition boxes, and endless lines of trucks. Weber sits in the temporary headquarters, candlelight flickering across stacks of reports and supply manifests, absorbing the full weight of what he has seen. October 15th, 1944. Aachen outskirts, Germany. The morning fog hangs low over the shattered outskirts of the city, draping broken buildings and cratered streets in a pale gray. Weber steps carefully over debris and splintered beams, boots crunching on shattered cobblestones. His eyes sweep over the Allied supply depot they secured overnight. Rows of jeeps, half-tracks, and fuel barrels stretch further than he can see, like an industrial forest of steel and logistics. Soldiers move methodically among them, cataloging, securing, and preparing to redeploy supplies forward. Weber's mind races with calculations. Each fuel drum, each crate of 105mm shells, each pallet of rations represents a force multiplier for the Allies. He mentally compares it to German reserves. Even if every Panzer, Panther, and Tiger in the vicinity were fully fueled and armed, the disparity is staggering. They are already behind, not in tactical engagements, but in the silent war of numbers that a young lieutenant approaches, a map in hand, voice tight with anxiety. "Sir, if we try to hold the front, we can only delay them a few days. The supplies, they have more than we can destroy." Weber nods grimly. He looks at the horizon, where columns of Shermans move steadily forward, their engines low and confident. Infantry and engineers follow, replenishing lost vehicles and munitions from the depots they abandoned. Each passing vehicle confirms the arithmetic that has haunted Weber since North Africa. Destruction means little when the opponent can replace losses faster than you can inflict them. He kneels beside a crate of ammunition, tapping it lightly. The hollow clink echoes in the ruined street, almost a mockery. The reality crystallizes in his mind. The front isn't just a line to hold. It is a ledger of resources, of fuel, ammo, and rations. For every German advantage gained in skill or terrain, the Allies' logistical superiority erases it. By mid-afternoon, Weber convenes his officers. The discussion is clinical, almost detached, focused entirely on quantities. How much fuel? How many artillery rounds? The number of vehicles available versus the number that can be replaced. Tactics and bravery take a back seat. Numbers dictate the possible and the impossible. The officers listen, faces pale, understanding that courage alone cannot win when the balance of supply is irreversibly against them. Weber walks the perimeter again as twilight descends. The depot seems endless, the organized rows of supplies stretching into shadow. He thinks back to the desert, to Tobruk, to North Africa, the first time he had realized the scale of Allied logistics. Then, it had been a revelation. Now, it is undeniable. The war is being decided not by any single battle, but by the relentless, overwhelming power of supply chains, fuel drums, and ammunition crates. That night, Weber writes a report for command, precise and factual, but heavy with unspoken meaning. The war is already being determined by arithmetic, not valor. Every captured Allied supply dump, every abandoned depot, is evidence that Germany cannot hope to match the flow. It is a truth as bitter as it is inescapable. The front is lost not for want of courage, but for want of numbers. Weber leans back in his chair, staring at the shadows cast by flickering candlelight, the weight of arithmetic pressing down on him like the desert sun months before. October 16, 1944. Aachen, Germany. The city is quiet now, deceptively so. Rubble litters the streets, punctuated by smoldering wrecks of German vehicles abandoned in retreat. Weber steps outside, the cool evening air carrying the faint scent of diesel, cordite, and scorched earth. In the distance, he hears the low rumble of engines, Shermans, half-tracks, and supply trucks rolling forward, their headlights piercing the dusky fog. Each vehicle seems insignificant alone, yet together they form a river of relentless motion, unstoppable and inevitable. Weber walks along the captured supply depot. Soldiers move with precision, inventorying crates, stacking ammunition, checking fuel levels. The scale is almost obscene. Thousands of rounds of artillery, tens of thousands of gallons of fuel, endless rations, vehicles in perfect rows, all ready to be sent to the front lines. Each drum, each crate, is a cog in the immense machine that Germany cannot hope to match. He recalls the faces of his men in North Africa, the wonder and dread as they first encountered the sprawling Allied supply dumps. Then it had seemed distant, abstract, an advantage perhaps, but not yet decisive. Here, it is visceral. Each item represents not just material, but momentum, the ability to sustain fighting, to replace losses faster than they can be inflicted. Every tactical success Germany might claim is immediately counterbalanced by an Allied advantage in logistics. A young lieutenant passes, reporting the quantities of captured supplies. "Sir, we can hold what we have taken, but the Americans have reserves beyond our ability to count." His voice falters. Weber nods. There is no blame, only recognition of the inescapable truth. He climbs onto a half-track, surveying the depot from above. The scale is dizzying. Rows of vehicles stretch beyond the eye, crates stacked high like miniature fortresses. He understands now that war is no longer a sequence of battles won by courage or skill alone. It is decided in the quiet arithmetic of fuel drums, ammunition, and food, the silent verdict that underpins every front, every engagement. Weber sits alone for a moment, notebook in hand, jotting figures, locations, and estimates. Outside, the engines of the Allied supply chain continue, steady, and unwavering. The front is not just contested by soldiers. It is measured in resources, in replacements, in the ability to sustain motion long after courage and tactics have reached their limit as night falls. Weber stares at the depot, the stars faint above a city scarred by retreat and bombardment. He writes a final note. Captured supply reveals what every engagement confirms. Germany cannot match the scale, and the outcome is determined by forces beyond any battlefield bravery. The front is already lost.